Hey, I'm Dan Pascone, CEO of Tailored Wealth and host of the Making Sense of Your Money podcast, where every conversation is built around one idea that your money is a tool to design and live your version of a rich life. And a lot of high earners quietly wonder if they could ever go out on their own. But typically, the mortgage, the kids, the paycheck that they've come to rely on keep them feeling like a slave to their salary. So, how do you actually make that leap without blowing up everything you've built? And once you're running the show, how do you keep the business itself financially healthy? Today, I'm joined by Rick Sanchez, founder and CEO of Robin Consulting Group and a fractional CFO who helps founders turn messy financials into a clear operating system. We get into how to test your way out of corporate before you jump, why not all revenue is good revenue, the levers that actually drive a business, and the mindset shift from budgeting to planning in your company and in your own life. So before we get into it, make sure that you're subscribed on your favorite platform. And if the show is adding value, I'd really appreciate a quick review. It goes a long way. Thanks and enjoy the episode.
Brought to you by Tailored Wealth, helping business leaders live their version of a rich life.
Welcome to another edition of the Making Sense of Your Money podcast, where we cut through the financial noise and help business leaders to make smart, confident money decisions. All right, Rick, thanks for joining the Making Sense of Your Money podcast. Excited to have you today, man.
Thanks, Dan. Happy to be on here. Been watching the podcast for a couple of weeks now. Pumped to be here.
Appreciate that. We're happy to have you. And I'm excited about this conversation to sort of, cross over between business finance and personal finance, because I know you've got some experience in both. But why don't you just start off by sharing a little bit about what you do, what your firm does, and sort of your track to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, everybody, Rick Sanchez. I'm the CEO and managing partner of Robin Consulting Group. I spent the last 15 years in corporate finance based down here in Miami, most notably in the technology and the startup space with kind of the boom that's going down here in South Florida. And really what we do is try to open up doors in terms of giving tools, frameworks, financial operations to brilliant operators, brilliant technologists, amazing product managers, and really kind of give some of these startups, the frameworks that they can use to really succeed. And I think, in a nutshell, kind of the three problems that we really address here at Robin Consulting Group is really founders are kind of anxious about their financials with no visibility. They're really kind of stuck in their toes just in terms of, not knowing where their business is going without understanding the levers of their business, their operations, without a true forecast or blueprint of their business. And finally, when they're looking to sell their business, they don't know who to turn to. They don't have a dedicated partner that they can go to and answer confident questions of how do I get this done? How do I sell my business at the end of the day? So our job is building that financial operating system in a nutshell to be able to maximize that multiple for them and maximize that sale business.
Love it. All right. So take us through really quick. You mentioned you spent a bunch of years in corporate finance. I want to hear a little bit about your journey. We'll touch on that. And then I want to talk a little bit about the types of folks that you help and that you work with today.
Yeah. Good question, Dan. So I started my career immediately after college. I studied economics down here in South Florida at Florida National University. I then immediately got a job as essentially a analyst, bouncing around a couple of different departments. And what I really loved about that was I was able to see different aspects of the business. I was able to see how operations ran. I was able to see how the supply chain was basically growing. And this was all for a technology company. And being in all those departments, I really enjoyed thinking about the bigger picture of the company. I got to kind of see the macro before the micro, right? I was able to see the holistic picture of how that business ran before deciding, okay, I think I want to go down this avenue, which where I, landed was basically FP&A or financial planning and analysis. And jumping into that department essentially as a manager, I was able to control, manage, understand the levers of the entire scope of every department because in FP&A, right? And I really call it more financial performance and analysis because I'm responsible for basically measuring and fine tuning all the most critical key performance indicators of each of these departments basically under my scope. And from there, I grew into a director of revenue management, I was overseeing the sales team. I was responsible for their delivery. And this was at the height of COVID, actually, for a technology company that offered virtual call centers, which was really, really in a unique position because call centers at the time, basically in both Manila and the Philippines, China, India, if you remember, that's essentially where the COVID virus started. They basically had to freeze all
Yep.
operations, kick everybody immediately, besides tons of furloughs. But what this virtual company essentially offered was customer experience, customer support, technical support. So all these massive, massive Fortune 500 companies here in the United States. And we saw excess growth of roughly, I think we generated 200 million in new contract value just in 2020 when COVID hit. So it's probably one of the very, very few um, and proud stories of a company that actually grew during COVID instead of sinking. And I think we're kind of in that age
Wow.
now with the forefront of AI, where artificial intelligence is kind of coming in, where there's another jump in tech. But specifically to my background, immediately after that revenue management role, I found myself across a couple of different CFO roles before ultimately thinking, this is all great and dandy, but I want something a little bit more for myself. And I eventually spun up my own consulting firm around 4 years ago with no real blueprint, to be totally honest with you. It was kind
Okay.
of made up as I go. For the better half of it, I was struggling to accrue clients. I was struggling to figure out, like, what is my product? What is my service? What am I offering? Before a couple clients came in, couple would walk away, and eventually I was able to scale the firm. And that was really kind of a result of me basically offering as much value up front for my services as a fractional CFO to a lot of small to medium sized businesses. And I think our bucket is really customers that are and clients that are under $10 million in top line revenue who do need that white glove touch from a Fortune 500 CFO. And I think that's what we try to do is really make finance as simple as possible. So today, we're kind of focused towards the technology. We're really, really big in software as a service atmospheres. With my
Yeah.
background in kind of health tech, we have, another half of our portfolio is in healthcare. So there's a couple of different angles. I'd like to stay between ideally those two industries, but there's no reason that, a CFO and our team can't go into different industries to support. So
All right, we're gonna get into that a little bit more, but first on your journey, what prompted you to leave the corporate world and go do something on your own? Was it flexibility? Was it control? Was it just sort of this, aspiring motivation to want to be an entrepreneur? What drove that, Rick?
the number one factor, it's funny, was a surprise baby was coming on the way. My daughter was
Okay.
born just after COVID, and I just kind of looked in the mirror at 30 years old, and I thought to myself, I need some equity, not for me, but for this kid. My goodness, like, I'm gonna need to, like, pave some sort of path to be able to, like, give her something. And I had always dreamed of being, to get a bad rap for the terminology, but a consultant. I view myself as a consultant that rolls up his sleeves. I like to differentiate between brain consulting, which you kind of think of as the Deloittes, the Big Fours. I'm more of a muscle consultant
Yep.
where I'm in there building the financial operations, fixing collection processes, fixing invoicing, developing software. It's a bit more
Right.
nuanced, but for the bigger part of it, I wanted equity. Selfishly, I wanted equity for myself. I wanted equity for my family. And the vision that I had in my mind was, what the hell did I get this MBA for if I'm not going to go and launch my own business and run my own company? It's like, what am I doing here working for the man when I can do this myself? I think is the prettier way to put it. But I needed that kick in the butt with the my surprise, beautiful daughter coming along the way back in 2020. So that was a big motivating factor.
I I love it. I love it. That's a great one, and thanks for sharing that. It's interesting. So, a couple of things from what you just said. I, like you, have an MBA and wondered at one point in time, well, why did I get it? What am I doing with it?
Right,
But so
right,
I'm with
right,
you on that. But it's led us to a similar path.
for sure.
It's interesting because I think a lot of times, we have a lot of folks in our audience that are in high performing, fairly high paying corporate roles, and they're trying to figure out, could I go do something for myself? And a lot of
Mm.
times, like family dynamics and family obligations, frankly, I find keep them stuck in the corporate role, right? So it's like the opposite of what you did, right? They think, well, I've got kids and I've got a mortgage and I've got bills to pay. So I'm sort of I'm almost a slave to the paycheck, if you will. It's funny. I
Yep.
did a poll on LinkedIn today and I asked folks, what's keeping you in your corporate role? And I'll be interested to share
Mm.
the results when they come out. But that's what it was all about, was like, why are you staying in the corporate role? So I'm
Yep.
fascinated by you wanting to make the move because
Right. Right.
you had
What's
family
holding you back
dynamics.
at the
And
end?
so tell us a little bit, Rick, around how you thought about that transition and that change from a personal finance perspective, right? Like, how did you get yourself around being able to make the shift from having a paycheck to now having to go run a business and develop your own paycheck, if you will?
I think I have always been kind of obsessed with financial modeling. And in my head, I had always thought like I wanted to be the most dangerous analyst, the most dangerous financial modeler. I have like this asphyxiation basically with building Legos and building financial models in Excel to me is essentially adults' a way of building Legos. So in my head, the way that I kind of thought about
I love that.
jumping in, and I'll give you two perspectives because if I was to do this all again today, I would blow it all up and I would basically work for free because I can command so much value in my services now because of all the suffering that took place back in 2020 when I was launching this firm, trying to figure, the whole thing out, understanding, how to launch this company. But to be very honest, you need to be in an atmosphere where you can at least in the technology space, they call it a minimum viable product, which is essentially an MVP. And I think what you need
Right.
to do is put yourself in a space
MVP.
where you can at least test your ideas, test your product, test your services to even see if it's worth it. And two, not even to see if you can offer value to customers, but just see if you like it. Do you enjoy the work? Do
Right.
you want to do this? Because sure, there's a monetization aspect to the personal finance side of things where it's like, yeah, I can, be my own boss. Great. You're still working 80 hours a week on this business. You can make infinite income. Great. You're taking sales calls, you're doing administration, you're doing client work. It's not as rosy as a picture for the first couple of
Yeah.
years when you're building a startup, especially in our industry, right? We're very much alike in professional services where I have to wear all the hats, and it becomes a very, very difficult place those first couple of years until you're actually able to scale. And to be honest, 4 or 5 years in right now, I'm still figuring out what the word scale means to a professional services firm, right? I'm hiring accountants, I'm hiring engineers, I'm hiring CFOs, and it's just getting to a point where like, okay, I can breathe a little bit easier now. But I think the jump, I would highly, highly recommend this. You have got to find a testing environment. And I was able to do this because I took on a CFO role at a venture studio. And through that venture studio, I oversaw 10 portfolio companies. And I was like, okay, I'm the CFO of all of these companies. So basically, I'm a fractional CFO for all of them. They're not going to get my
Right.
dedicated time. It's absolutely impossible. So I was able to really build my model by putting myself into that environment. And I kind of took the job like expecting to measure out, this fractional CFO thing and see ideally what I could do. And I slowly realized like I need people, I need processes, and I need tech. If I'm going to spin this up on my own, create
Yep.
that side hustle a little bit and really scale this business. So I would say number one, find that testing environment. And two, offer work for free or as low a price as you're willing to accept. That's another big one that I think a lot of entrepreneurs or willing or aspirational entrepreneurs often skip. Because pricing is a big one because you have dreams of building this business, building this platform, but you got to start small and you got to start somewhere.
So you and I, you mentioned similar professional services, but you and I have had very similar experiences along the way. And I would tell folks, anyone that is an aspiring entrepreneur, highly, highly suggest the advice that Rick just gave. Do a bunch of work for free up front, right?
Yeah.
Just get get testimonials, get feedback, learn, because it's interesting, and I see this, and I was guilty of this myself, right? I like you was in a, I think a successful corporate role, right?
Yeah.
And so then when I went to go pivot and run my own business, you expect that like you're at a certain level. You expect that like people are just going to view you at that level, and all of a sudden you demand this, high price, and or you're automatically adding value just because of your past accomplishments. Well, the reality of it is, you know, even if you're going into, and many folks are leaving corporate to go in to do something on their own that is in a similar field to what they've done in the
Right.
past, similar expertise, right? But until you do it on your own and actually prove it and learn what your customers are looking for and learn their objections and learn their needs and their challenges, et cetera, it's very difficult to kind of package everything properly together, which it sounds like you have, and I've learned a lot about over the years that I've been in business myself. So that is wonderful advice. And I think, what's really important, especially for people that have experienced a level of success already in their career, when you go out and do something on your own, you got to check your ego at the door, right?
I
Like
was
the minute
honest.
you're going to serve a new customer, they don't care what you've done throughout your entire career. They care, can you add value to them now and moving forward, right? So doing that low price or free work provides so much value above and beyond the paycheck. And I always tell folks, because we help a lot of folks to financially plan for that transition, right? Plan their own finances for that transition.
Yeah.
And if you've done the right work planning for it and you've done the right work saving, you're going to be set up to in a point where you don't need to command a ton of revenue up front. You can build that revenue stream over time, and you should have the safety valve, and you should have the financing, and what I call the income bands to live during the time where you're building that business up. So I think that's phenomenal advice. All right, so let's transition now, Rick, to the types of folks and the businesses and the entrepreneurs that you serve today. And I want folks to
Mm.
understand it from a lens of somebody that might be looking to go out and get into business by themselves, or start a firm or build a business, and for those that might be CEOs or high level executives in technology or healthcare firms like the ones that you serve. What are the biggest lessons that folks need to kind of understand and process around company finances? Because I've seen some of your content, and I think you do a phenomenal job of simplifying it and making finances or business finances, if you will, seem less scary and less intimidating. So tell us a little bit about your process to do that.
I would say, there's three distinct value points that I think not just the CEOs and the companies that we work with across, SaaS tech and health tech to a degree. I think this kind of applies to all businesses. They have, different nuances to each of them. But I would say these three are absolutely fundamental. One, not all revenues are good revenues. And what I mean by that is profitable revenues are good revenues. That's lesson number one, because I can't tell you how many businesses, how many owners, how many founders look to me and tell me, "Oh, Rick, we'll just grow revenues. We'll just throw more at marketing to a degree where the lifetime value that you're acquiring that customer is less than the cost to acquire that customer." It is a losing business model and a terrible way to scale, because you will always remain flat. You will always look at your margins and ask yourself, I added more revenue, but yet my profit isn't growing, and nor is the cap in my bank account. That is the single reason why those businesses, I wouldn't say go belly up, but stay sustain. And that's why business owners, especially I know it's in the kind of blue collar home services sector, always stay at a very, very flat margin and are always killing themselves working 80 hours. So I would really ask yourself, what are the most profitable service lines? What are the most profitable services? That's how you maximize revenue. Um, I would say number two, and gotten really, really good at this, specifically in the SaaS technology and software industries. You have to know your levers and understanding the levers of the business. I tell a lot of my CEOs that I am not forecasting your financials, forecasting the decisions that you make in operations.
Interesting.
The output of that is just financial performance. But at the end of the day, if you come to me, Dan, and you're asking me, Rick, I want to hire that VP of marketing, I want to hire that sales director, and I'm going to tell you, great, you're going to lose a $150,000, $200,000 salary for the first 3 months, because I guarantee you, he's not going to get up to speed. He's not going to know what he's doing. He or she is not going to be able to deliver until month 4. But then we can start saying, here's the result of the pipeline. Here's the deals we can reasonably assess to close. We could build scenario managers, till we're red in the eyes. But understanding your levers in the SaaS environment, is all about how do I affect operations? And I would say the biggest levers in SaaS, not the same case in health tech, in SaaS is what is your acquisition efficiency, which is how well acquiring customers, so your customer acquisition value. Number 2 is retention. How many butts are you keeping in your subscription models? Are you going and backfilling them with all of your marketing costs, with all of your sales costs? Because every dollar that you lose from a customer that leaves either didn't enjoy the product, didn't like the product, or got a bad onboarding experience, right? So there are ways to control that. And then the final one, once you've ideally resolved both of those two, increase price points. Your team's probably at capacity. It's time to expand, and it's probably time to build out more features for your product to offer more value. But those levers are just on the revenue side. And I think where the last number 3 bullet that I would have, cash is not profit. That's probably the Bible of what I can relay to customers, especially for when I tell my SaaS CEOs all the time, I don't really care about profit. What I care about is that we have positive cash flow every single month, because a good a good CEO who thinks like an investor, who thinks like a CFO, knows that he is creating value by increasing revenue because he's hoping for some form of a annualized reoccurring revenue multiple, not an EBITDA multiple. So if that's the end game, he should be taking every dollar and putting it back into the revenue generating system. And profit really shouldn't be a worry, because what you can do at the end of the year, right, is write off as much as possible by maintaining a very, very low net operating income or net income at the end of the day. So I think those 3 levers in a nutshell are the biggest teachings that within our sprint, the first, 2 months in working in an engagement with the client, we've got to kind of, hit them over the head with this is how we're going to run operations. And it's different for each business, but those are probably the biggest 3 that I could teach. And I'm sure even for yourself, Dan, right? I mean, you probably deal with those on your clients one-on-one.
100%. I deal with it in my own business. I deal with it with clients on the personal side, and hear some of these challenges for the clients that we work with that are business owners. All right. So you touched on something that I want to scratch out a little bit further.
Yeah.
And this is one that, I've thought a lot about myself, and I hear a lot of people that are kind of in a startup mode thinking a lot about and trying to make educated decisions on. How do you think about marketing and let's just call it client acquisition cost, CAC,
Yes.
right? How do you think about that in a startup environment, and how much should early stage companies be thinking about client acquisition? And I'm sure it's somewhat dependent upon their goals and what they want to get to. But help us, like, give us like a framework for thinking about how much should be going into marketing, sales, everything that you have to do to acquire the customer, especially early on when the customer base is fairly limited.
I would say there's a sequencing to it, right? Like you just laid out, a pretty clear path in terms of, one, differentiating between the sales and marketing functions. I would also add that as a part of acquisition, the customer support function, delivery for clients, continually offering that value to customers, again, to the point of managing retention and managing churn. Once you get a customer, you want to keep their butt there. You don't want to lose them. So you need to continually offering that value. But I would separate, marketing into a couple of different buckets. There's definitely top of funnel marketing, which has a lot more to do with just brand awareness. So if I'm new to the entrepreneur game, I'm talking basics. Get your LinkedIn fired up. Get social media going. Hire, a pretty cheap VA just to constantly post. It could be about anything. I mean, ideally, it addresses the pain points of your target market, of who you're going after in your niche. But top of funnel marketing, brand recognition, some form of, oh, I saw this ad from, Joe. Who is Joe? And they have the ability to look you up. A website, for instance, goes a long way. And I think with all the things AI is doing, you could spin up an HTML code quite easily to design an entire
Okay.
website these days.
Sure
Um,
can.
and then I would start to think through the sales process. And I mean this, I was horrible at sales until I started, my own business, and I was forced to take sales calls. I was forced to address pain points. And sales is exactly that. It is a process. I use the exact same script. It's been fine tuned over the last 5 years, obviously, but I use a script every single call that I go on. I use a script every time I go into a client. I use a script every time I know I have an opportunity to upsell. It sounds ridiculous, but it is a really, really powerful tool. And I would say the further you can detail your sales process from lead generation into qualification into discovery,
Yep.
right? I now have a process where I don't talk to leads as they come through my pipeline, through my referrals, through my paid ads, until I know that they actually have a problem that I can solve. And that problem is big enough for our team to actually handle, right? Because selfishly don't want to kill my bandwidth nor my team's bandwidth. And at first, starting out as an entrepreneur, you're going to say yes to everything, right? Because
Sure.
you need revenues to hit at the end of the day. And you should, right? You should be a yes man or a yes woman to a great degree, because what you want to do is understand what works in your product or service and what
Yep.
doesn't work. And you cut the crap and you throw away all the things that don't work. But back to marketing, right? I would say it's top of funnel, understand your sales process, and most importantly, I think it's measuring, right, the effectiveness of your sales closing, the effectiveness of your leads, quantifying, who are actually the clients that have worked out, and just taking kind of an inventory of like, who are the clients you like to work with and who are the ones that you don't like to, because what you'll be able to find is each channel, right? As you start making a little bit more money as an entrepreneur, you're going to start to put some in paid ads. After, again, you get your top of funnel going, you're going to start to put some in paid ads. You're going to put some in SEO. You're going to put some in other mediums. You're going to do maybe even influencer marketing. And what you
Yep.
want to measure, right, is a return on that spend, or a return on ad spend, specifically when it comes to paid ads. And that's how you get efficiencies, and that's how you make decisions from a, it's like a CFO lens as an entrepreneur is the way that I would put
And do you recommend, I mean, that's fascinating stuff. It's something that I spend a lot of time thinking about for my business. Do you
it.
recommend that companies, from like a marketing channel perspective, I love what you're saying about sort of evaluating the ROI from each channel. Do you recommend that earlier stage companies sort of start small and really be a little bit more narrow with their channels, and then just sort of add channels as you're going, and then just the idea of kind of fine tuning and evaluating them? Or do you recommend starting with a bunch and sort of testing and seeing what works, and then sort of pouring dollars into the ones that have a better return profile?
The number one thing that I would do is research, because in my opinion, marketing as a whole, like the function of marketing, is really kind of like a
Yep.
scientific experiment. It's all hypothesis testing. You have no
Yep.
clue if your product, right? Like even for me, I have no clue if my product is better than yours. I don't know if it's better than a CPA, but I know that whatever works between us, because we're kind of in the same industries, I can kind of steal those frameworks, leverage what's worked for you, leverage what's worked for the CPAs, leverage what's maybe worked for a private equity firm, and use that as my go-to-market strategy. But you're right, it's all conditional on cash in the bank. So if you're bootstrapped, I would say I would not focus on more than two marketing funnels. But if I have obviously more cash in the coffers, then I could test a couple of different strategies. But even then, I would say you want to really kind of refine that hypothesis test to really only benchmark one against the other. Because if you're only doing one and you're relying, let's say, on paid ads, what are you comparing that to?
Right.
And at the end of the day, I think comparing paid ads against referrals, for instance, referrals, I give, 10% to any referral partner for as long as I hold that contract. That's a very, very low customer acquisition cost. Versus the paid ads, to get in front of maybe 100,000 people, I'll spend probably $100,000 in a year pushing out ads, and maybe I'll close like 2 or 3 deals from it. So it's not as lucrative, but there's almost like a necessary evil, kind of depending on the industry. But that hypothesis testing strategy is kind of the big one, and I would always try to run at least two campaigns if I was in kind of startup mode or as a young entrepreneur.
Love it. Love it. All right. Good stuff. All right. That's a great place to transition. So now we're going to get to know you a little bit more. So, Rick,
Yeah.
you're officially entering the lightning round. If you've listened to our podcast before, Just a series of
Love it.
questions, and we just want the first thought that comes to your head.
Let's do it. It'll be quick.
All
Love
right, let's do it. All right, we'll start with the one I always like to kick off with. One meal for the rest of your life. What is it?
it. Ooh. Wow. Okay. First one that came to my head, it's the San Francisco dish called cioppino. And I religiously make it every New Year's Eve for my family. And it's
Okay.
basically an assortment of super rich broth from all these seafood ingredients, nice crusty, sourdough baguette. I proposed to my wife over in Bixby Bridge over in San Francisco and West Coast area. Um,
Nice.
I love that dish, and it's kind of become more of a tradition than it is anything else.
That's
That's
a good answer. We haven't had that one yet, so that's good. I love it,
yeah.
man. Nice. All right, what is one tool or piece of technology other than your phone or your computer that you can't live without?
Ooh,
Hardware or software?
hardware or software? I mean, can it be on my computer?
Sure.
I would say Excel. I mean,
Yeah.
Excel is the only reason I'm a CFO today. It's the only reason I've been, valued by my customers. It's the only reason I've gotten to
Okay.
where I am today. To be honest, actually, here, quick funny story, and I won't go too far because I know it's a lightning round. Um, I used to play quarterback in high school. I used to play point guard in high school. I measured all my team's stats essentially on Excel, and that's kind of like where
I love it.
my love for data really began. I was like, oh, what was my QBR that day? Oh, it wasn't too hot compared to 2 weeks ago. Like, you need to improve on those go passes, Rick. Like, okay, cool. So
Well, it wasn't around when we were kids, but now I spend a lot of time coaching my son's teams, and there's a great application called Game Changer, which compiles all
love
the
it.
data of the games, and you would really enjoy it. It's a fun one. I've become pretty
I
addicted to
love
it
it. I love it. I'll
myself.
have to download it.
Yeah, cool, cool. All right, what is one early experience or just experience in general, frankly, that shaped how you think about money today?
Mm. I would say when I was in college, I think I was a sophomore. And my parents had always been very high income earners, and my dad lost his job. And he was known in this career just because he had been kind of a television anchor. Um, and I kind of saw, not dark moments. He's a super proud, Latino man. He's very, very strong willed. He's incredibly empathetic. Um, but I just saw a different side of him. I saw a more humbled side. He wasn't as boisterous. He wasn't as egoed. And I was kind of like, I don't want anyone to ever steal my thunder. And I think that's a little bit why I pursued my MBA kind of down the line, where, you know, taking a man's wallet, can really kind of hurt. Taking a man's paycheck, taking a man's opportunity at the end of the day, you know, affects a lot. It affected the family, it affected him, it affected a lot of things downstream. We had to move to South Florida. Um, he had to, take on a couple of different jobs. He wasn't working a relatively cushy news anchor 40-hour a week job. It was now piecemealing multiple jobs. And I think from that, I've kind of realized like my work ethic, even as a fractional CFO, I'm happy to give 60 to 70 hours a week to clients just because I know I'm kind of changing lives here at the end of the day. I'm, raising funds for, a line of credit. I'm doing things that can promote businesses they can now spend times with their kids at their sports events, right? At the end of the day. So right, if I can put in a little now and, go back to that moment where my dad called me that he had lost his job, I was like, wow, that was the defining moment, I think.
I love it. Really, really good one. Really good one. What's one habit or process that's had a major impact on your success?
Ooh, I hate the word budget, but a budget
Okay.
is probably the most important thing that you can do personally for your financials. And I hate the word budget because I was taught in the corporate finance world that it's called a plan, because a plan means like, this is the goal. This is what we're going for. This is what everyone's trying to get to. If we all get to this, boom, everybody gets their bonus. And then there's, dividends, yada, yada. Because a plan represents, a goal, and a budget just sounds like so constricting at the end of the day. It's like, no, I'm going to put you on a budget and we need to not go over that cost. I feel like a plan is a bit more aspirational, but I would say even at the personal finance level, my wife and I have a very, very detailed budget. Obviously, me being a CFO, of course, it's going to be. we've got everything detailed of our personal lives directly into QuickBooks. So we measure against that, and we celebrate if it's a good month, and we make course corrections if it's a bad month against our goals.
I love it. Yeah, it's funny. I was listening to a podcast earlier this week and it's talked about the negative connotation around budgeting, right? But
Yep.
planning is a much bigger thinking, right? Budgeting feels
It is.
small, it feels tedious, but planning feels like goals and long term and
Yeah,
accomplishments, and you can tie maybe shorter term sacrifices to longer term wins, which I think is really what
correct.
what that process is all about. So really really
Bingo.
well said. What's one skill that you're intentionally trying to get better at right now?
The biggest one right now, and I need to find a way to almost do this with my daughter a little bit. So I'll give you two. Number one, I want to be an awesome dad. I want to be like a loving dad. I want to give my daughter like a hell of a lot more time. That's number one. And number two, I would say is just being able to teach my kids more about what their dad does, right? Because there was a great
Right.
degree of like, I for a moment thought I was going to be a newscaster. I thought I was going to go into media. And then I went with my dad to a couple of days to work and realized real quick, wow, I hate this. I'm not a writer. It doesn't actually, I don't really want to be on stage. I don't want to, be in front of a camera. And I kind of want to give my kids that experience to kind of ask themselves, like, do you enjoy this? I can set up, in my opinion, what I would want to do is set up an empire for you guys, build it all around you, build it, protect all the assets, yada yada yada. But if you guys don't want that, I can fund other adventures for you, whatever you want to
Sure.
do. But I at least kind of want to throw them into the fire a little bit and kind of get them upskilled just on the financial aspects of life. So
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I think very similarly about that stuff. All right, last one. If you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
one piece of advice to my younger self: you're going to figure it out. Take all the L's that you possibly can. Try as many things as you can. Be a yes man, be a yes woman. Eat the frog. I mean, you're gonna deal with a lot of crap, but you're gonna be okay at the end of it all. So I think it's really being a yes man. And I did that, after having a bunch of changes of my college degree multiple times. I think I bounced around like 4 or 5 times. I didn't have the best grades, and you know what? I was like, okay, cool. I was a C or B student. I ended up figuring it out, and now I run a consulting firm that's making $1 million a year. How the hell did I do that? I don't even know.
Yeah,
But
good.
I could do it again. And if I could do it again, I would be a hell of a lot more efficient and a hell of a lot better at it.
Yeah, you and me both. You and me both. All right, very
All right.
cool. Awesome. All right, Rick, if our listeners want to connect with you, collaborate, work with you, find you, what's the best way to find? Where can we find you?
Yep. I've got a contact link directly at Robin, ROBYNCG.com. Again, that's
Okay.
Robin, ROBYNCG.com. So Robin Consulting Group. And the email will go directly to me once you book a link, and we can hop on a call immediately. So I'm looking forward to connecting with everybody.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing your time and insights today. Really enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Dan.
You bet. That's it for the episode. You can find our podcast along with our newsletter and YouTube channel all for free at makingsenseofyourmoney.com. And as always, be sure to prioritize your version of a rich life.